This is a recording for Unit 2 review. On your review, please omit problems number 29 and 30. Let's start by matching our vocabulary to pictures that describe the words that are given. Our first word is vertex. We want to look for the picture that has a vertex being pointed out, and that is going to be J. Notice it is pointing to the vertex. So we write J. An acute angle we know is an angle that is less than 90 degrees. And looking at our pictures, the angle less than 90 degrees, that is A. Adjacent angles, these are angles that are directly next to each other. They share a common side and a common vertex. That is going to be H. Straight angle makes a line, and so our line is D. Linear pair, these are adjacent angles in which the opposite or the sides that are not connected create a line. I see angle 1 and angle 2 in F. There's the non-adjacent side that creates a line, and so our linear pair is F. An obtuse angle is an angle that is greater than 90 degrees but less than 180. That's going to be B. Vertical angles, they are created by intersecting lines. They are opposite each other, so that is going to be G. Right angle, a right angle is a 90-degree angle, which is symbolized with a square in the corner, so that is C. Supplementary angles are angles that add up to be 180 degrees. If I add 26 and 154, this gives me 180, so that is E. Complementary angles should add up to be 90 degrees. 26 plus 64 does equal 90, and so that is I. And an angle bisector, I notice that I have a picture that has an arrow pointing to a ray, and in this picture I can see that it created two congruent angles, and so that is our angle bisector, that is K. Now we're going to use the figure in order to answer the following questions, being sure to use the appropriate symbols where necessary. We need to name that angle. So to name an angle, we can name it with 3 letters. I can start at L, go to M, the vertex, and end at N. So one way is to name it angle LMN, or I can switch the first and the last letter, NML, or in this case I can also name it with just the vertex, because that is the only angle we see with that vertex M, so angle M. It is important that you do have the angle symbol in front. We're going to name the vertex, that is my point M. The sides of my angle are raised, so that's ML, and I put the raised symbol, and MN, and put the raised symbol. Again, notice that when we name the sides, we start with the vertex, and then go to the letter that creates that side. Classify this angle. This angle is more than 90 degrees, so this is an obtuse angle. On 16, we're going to find the measure that is indicated. Let us start by labeling our picture. We are given PQR. So I start at P, go to Q, end at R. Notice that is the whole big angle that is equal to 87 degrees. And then we're also given that PQS. So start at P, go to vertex Q, end at S. That's the one on the top inside. This angle is equal to 5x minus 3. And then our last angle they give us is SQR. So I start at S, go to the vertex Q, end at R. This is the one on the bottom. And that is equal to 2x minus 1. This is an example of part plus part equals the whole. So if I add the two parts together, 5x minus 3 and 2x minus 1, that gives us a total of 7x minus 4, and that is equal to my whole of 87. We get to solve for x. We're going to add 4 to both sides in order to get the 7x by itself. 87 plus 4 is 91. And then to get the x by itself, we will divide both sides by 7. And it gives us x is equal to 13. Now that we know what x is, we can figure out what SQR is. SQR was my yellow circle. So we are, sorry, yellow angle. So we plug in 13 for x. 2 times 13 is 26, minus 1 is 25. So the measure of angle SQR is 25 degrees. 17, we're given that FH bisects EFG. So if FH bisects EFG, that means it is breaking EFG into two equal angles, two congruent angles. We're given that EFH, so EFH, start at E, go to the vertex F, end at H. That's the one that's to the left. That is equal to 8x minus 3. And we're also given that HFG, so start at H, go to the vertex F, end at G, that's the one to the bottom right, is equal to 4x plus 9. If FH bisects it, then that tells us 8x minus 3 is equal to 4x plus 9. In order for us to solve for x, I have to get the x's on the same side, so we're going to move the 4 by subtracting 4x. That'll give us 4x minus 3 on the left is equal to a positive 9. Now to get the x by itself, we must get rid of the 3, so we're going to add 3 to both sides. That'll leave us with 4x is equal to positive 12. To get the 4, or to get the x by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 4, and that'll give us x is equal to 3. So if x is equal to 3, we want to find EFG. EFG, notice, was the entire angle. EFG is the entire angle, so I need to know this whole part, this whole angle. Well, I can substitute x in for 3. I can substitute 3 in for x and figure out what each angle is. So I'm going to do it to the HFG. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 9, that equals 21. If I was to do it to the 8x minus 3, we have 8 times 3 is 24, minus 3 gives you 21, which makes sense since it's bisected, they should be equal to each other. So the entire angle is 21 plus 21, which is 42. Now we need to classify our angles. When we classify our angles, remember there are only 4 ways in which we classify the angles. We classify the angles using acute, obtuse, right, or straight angle. When you classify the angle, you classify them by their degree measure. So an angle that measures 33 degrees, that's less than 90 degrees, this is an acute angle. An angle with a measure of 111, that's bigger than 90 degrees, so this is an obtuse angle. An angle that measures 89.9, again, this is less than 90 degrees, and so this is an acute angle. And an angle that measures 180 degrees, that creates a straight line, so therefore it is a straight angle. So acute is less than 90, obtuse bigger than 90, a right is equal to 90, and straight is equal to 180. Now we're going to talk about angle pairs. We're going to find the value of x. Let's look at this picture. I notice that I have a little square there that tells me that these angle pairs are complementary angles. That means they sum to 180 degrees. So if I combine the 7x minus 5 with the 4x minus 4, that'll give me 11x minus 9. That has to add up to not 180 degrees, I'm sorry. Complementary is 90 degrees. Has to add up to 90 degrees. So now we can solve for x. I want to get the 11x by itself, so we'll add 9 to both sides. That'll give us 11x is equal to 99. Get the x by itself by dividing both sides by 11. And that'll give us x is equal to 9. Number 23. First, we need to identify the type of angle pair that we're dealing with, and then find the measure of the labeled angles. So, the type of angle pairs that we have linear pairs, we have vertical angles, we have complementary, and supplementary. Those are only 4 types that we can deal with. So our first example, we're told that the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B equals 90. That tells us these are complementary angles, because complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. So now if I add my two angles together, 7x plus 4 and 3x plus 1, add it together, we get 10x plus 5. That must add up to 90 degrees. We just took angle A, added to angle B, and set it equal to 90. Now let's solve. We're going to subtract 5 from both sides. That'll give us 10x is equal to 85. And then divide both sides by 10. And that will give us x is equal to 8.5. Now that I know what x is, I can put that back into my measures in order to figure out what each angle is measured or equals to. Measure of angle A is 3 times 8.5 plus 1, and the measure of angle B is going to be 7 times 8.5 plus 1. So let's figure out what that is. That should be 7 times 8.5 plus 4. So 3 times 8.5 plus 1 equals to 26.5. And 7 times 8.5 plus 4 equals to 63.5. If I was to add those two together, I should get 90 degrees. So this tells me my answers are correct. So the angle pairs we have, one angle is 26.5 degrees, the other is 63.5 degrees. 24, this looks like vertical angles. They're opposite each other, created by two intersecting lines. And what we know about vertical angles is that they are congruent. So we'll say 12x minus 3 equals to 7x plus 12. And we can now solve for x. To get the x, we do need to have them on the same side. So we have x's on the left and x's on the right. I'm going to move the 7 to the left by subtracting 7x from both sides. 12 minus 7 is 5. So we get a 5x minus 3 equals to a positive 12. We want to get the 5x by itself, so we got to get rid of the 3. Let's add 3 to both sides. This will give us 5x is equal to 15. And then to get the x by itself, we divide both sides by 5, and that'll give us x is equal to 3. Now that we know what x is, we can put it in either one of our two equations. So 12 times 3 minus 3 is going to give us 33. And because these are vertical angles, I should get 33 in the bottom also. This is an example of a linear pair. We have a pair of angles that are adjacent. They're non-common sides or non-adjacent sides create a line. And if it creates a line, we know that a straight angle has the measure of 180 degrees. So we can take the 2x plus 4, add it to the 4x plus 2. That'll give us 6x plus 6. And when we add that together, we get 180 degrees. Let's solve for x. We'll subtract 6 from both sides. This will give us 6x equals to 174. And then we'll divide both sides by 6 to get the x by itself. And that will give us x is equal to 29. So the type is a linear pair. And if x is 29, we need to figure out what each angle is. So we have 2 times 29 plus 4. That gives us 62. So one of the angle measures is 62. And then 4 times 29 plus 2 gives us 118. On 26, we are given that the measure of angle WXY, so start at W, go to X, end at Y, that angle is 98 degrees. So first we start by labeling, and we have that angle YXZ, so start at Y, go to X, end at Z, is 43 degrees. We want to find out what is YXZ. I'm sorry, WXZ. So that means start at W, go to X, end at Z. Notice that is the whole entire angle. So we can add the two together. 98 plus 43. And that'll give us our angle measurement is 141 degrees. If I have a pair of complementary angles, they will add up to be, by definition, 90 degrees. If angle 1 and angle 2 are supplements means they're going to add up to 180 degrees. We can find the value of x, so let's add them together. We have 3x plus 40 and 3x plus 8. That'll give us 6x plus 48. So 6x plus 48 has to add up to 180. So now it's a nice algebra problem. Let's subtract 48 from both sides. We get 6x is equal to 180 minus 48 is 132. To get the x by itself, we'll divide both sides by 6, and that'll give us x is equal to 22. And that is all we were asked to find, the value of x. (29) and 30, these are the two you were told to omit. 31, we are now going back to review problems. Find the distance between negative 11 and a negative 27 on a number line. So I'm going to draw a number line. Here's my 0. Negative 11 is over here. And negative 27 is all the way further left because it's more negative. So to get to negative 27, we go negative 11, negative 12, negative 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, ran out of room, 24, 25, 26, now I got to 27. So let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that was one way, was to take, to draw it out and then count. Another way that we discussed is to actually just subtract these two numbers. But don't worry about the negatives because I'm worried about distance. And distance is always positive. If I just subtract the two numbers, then we'll get 16. I want to now, this D means find the distance between A and B. Notice I have AB, no symbols above. That means I want to find the length or the distance between these 2 points. This requires using the distance formula, which you have on your formula chart. You do not have to have this memorized. I would suggest once you see it though, write it down from your formula chart. We have our first point A, that's our x1 and our y1. I'm using the subscripts just to tell me what point it is. And B, I'm letting that be my second point, my x2, y2. So now we will plug that into the distance formula. I'm plugging that into the distance formula. X2 is 4 minus a negative 4, that's my x1 squared, plus y2 is negative 1 minus y1 is negative 2 and squared. This is where I suggest you put just what is underneath the radical into your calculator and let it help you out. So I'll give you a chance to write that into your, or type that into your calculator. Notice I'm not putting the radical in, just the numbers. Let's see if we get the same answer. And I got 65. So 4 minus a negative 4, that becomes a positive 4, gives you a positive 8 squared. And then negative 1, this becomes plus a positive, that'll be a negative 1 squared though gives you a positive 1. So 64 plus 1 is 65. You can keep your answer as the square root of 65, or you can now take the square root of 65 and get a decimal, 8.062. Okay, 33, R is the midpoint of PS. If R is the midpoint, and notice this is segment PS, so let's draw my segment PS. R is the midpoint. Midpoint means it breaks it into 2 equal parts. We want to find the value of S. If PR is 6x minus 1, so I will label that as 6x minus 1, and PS, notice PS is the entire amount, so PS is equal to 8x. We need to figure out what x is. Well, I'm missing one of my parts. I'm missing the part RS. But I know that RS is the same as PR because R is the midpoint. So I can say RS is also 6x minus 1. So now I can do part plus part equals whole. If I add the top, we get 6x minus 1 plus 6x minus 1. That's a total of 12x minus 2. So 12x minus 2 has to equal to the whole entire thing of 8x. Now we can solve this. This time, even though I have 2 x's, I'm going to move the 12 to the other side because I already have an x by itself on the right hand side. So we'll subtract 12 from both sides. That'll give us a negative 2 is equal to a negative 4x. And now to get x, we want to divide both sides by negative 4. Got to take the number and the sign. And a negative 2 divided by a negative 4 then becomes a positive 1/2. Last one, we want to find the midpoint of segment AB. And so if I look at it, we're given a point A and a point B. A is at negative 2, 3, and B is at 3, negative 2. I want to find the midpoint, which is the halfway mark between the 2 points. So to find the midpoint, we have the midpoint formula on your chart again. This time we're taking the average of your x values and the average of your y values, and we can find our x coordinate and your y coordinate by taking those averages. So for the x coordinate of the midpoint, we're going to take the two x values, add them together, divide by 2. That's a negative 2 plus 3 and divide by 2. Don't forget, you have to do the top part first. So negative 2 plus 3 is a positive 1, and then we divide by 2. If you put this in your calculator, make sure you put parentheses around the numerator. My y-coordinate of the midpoint is going to be adding the y-coordinates together and divide by 2. So we have a 3 plus a negative 2 over 2. Again, if I use my calculator, I do the top part first. So 3 plus negative 2 is a positive 1, all that over 2. If you put the whole thing in, must use parentheses. So my midpoint is 1/2 and 1/2. That concludes the review for Unit 2.